Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we Masechtas Ksuvas daf Samach Tes. We are going to begin on the very top of Samach Tes Amud Aleph. The Gemara tells us that Tolei Rav or Rabbi Beni Chite, that Rabbi had this letter which was given over to him, and it was written between the lines. It says Rashi Sholcho Igeres Shloimim. He wrote a letter just of greeting, and Rav wrote this question between the lines. Ha'achin shishibdu mahu. When it comes to brothers who have this shibud, they have some type of lien on property, what's the din? So Havi Yosef Rav Chia Kimei, Amalei Machru o Mishkanu. The question is, what exactly was this question that was being posed? Was it that the land was sold, or is it that's referring to it was held as a mashkan, as collateral? So Amalei say, "My nafkamina, bein machru bein she mishchanu." What's the real nafkamina between the two? Either way, moitzin lo parnosa, bein moitzin lo mazainas. So the Beis Din would confiscate any land which is mishubadim, in which there's a lien on it, which the Yarshim sold to provide a nadunya. So that's the reality, that moitzin leparnasa. And therefore, the dowry money, which was supposed to be given over to their sister, to the Asoma, that is meshubed. However, not to provide mazonos. And the reason for this, as is brought down, is because of tikkun olam. Because when it comes to mazonos, it has no kitzvah, it doesn't have a set amount. And therefore, a person's not going to buy this land, even though, in general, there's a lien on property, but if you know that there's a set amount of how much the land can be taken away, that's one thing. However, mazonos, in which there's no kitzvah, there's no lien on the property. So he says, it doesn't really make a difference if it was sold or it's a mashkain. Either way, the din is dafka when it comes to parnasa for her nedunya. Do we say that there's a lien on it, but not for the mazonos? For Rav, imachru. So the question is, why does it really matter? According to Rav, imachru kimeboile. If in fact, when he was asked the question that the land was sold, so nichtav le machru, then he should have asked the question in his letter of what's the status of it sold. It's strange, why didn't he specify what his question was? And one could understand, because Rav Tervayu Kimeboile, he was actually wondering about both. The sovereign, he felt, if I mention that the land was sold by the Yisayimim, so Hanichale, and he says back to me, and that's what the question I really want. So if he sends back to me the moitzian that we will take it away, so koshikain mishkanai, so then maybe I would then derive that the same din would happen when it comes to a mashkain. Ishalchli ein moitzian, if we instead say, when he sells the land that is not taken back, so then a kanti mishkanu kimaboile, I wouldn't know what the status is when it comes to a mashkan. Therefore, I didn't want to mention the case of a machira, because it's possible, depending on how he would answer the question, it wouldn't answer the other one about a mashkan. Now, on the other hand, iksiv nele mishkanu, and if I only mention the case of a mashkan, so inshalachli the ein moitzian, that he can't take away that, then koshkin machru, certainly if it was sold. But inshalachli moitzian, that we take away a mashkan, so a kati machru kamaboili, I wouldn't know what the din is by machru, if the din is the same or perhaps is different. Shibudo mashmihachi, and therefore he wrote it in this more vague manner so that he should be able to address both questions. And again, what they said is, we are moitzian, but only for parnasa, only for the nedunya, but not for mazonos, because it has no kitzvah. However, even though that is his opinion, Rabbi Yochanan, he disagrees and says, ein moitzian. It doesn't make a difference, not only by mazonos, but even by the nedunya, there is no shiva, that you cannot take this land. There's no lien on the land regarding her dowry. So Yiboilhu. Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, Shmiele had the Rabbi. Is it possible, when Rabbi Yochanan said this, is that he never heard Rebbe's different opinion? But if he would have known that Rabbi disagrees, then maybe he would have accepted his opinion. Or, maybe Rabbi Yochanan actually knew that Rabbi disagreed, and he wouldn't accept it. So the question is, did he know Rabbi argued with him? Because if he knew Rabbi's opinion, maybe he would have agreed to him. So Tashma, the Inmar, we learn as follows. It says in Masechtas Gittin, Mi shemes. So you have a situation where a person dies, and he has 3 children that are alive. He has 2 daughters and 1 son. But Kadma Harishayna, so one of the daughters got up first, and she took her dowry, which is Isa Nechasim, 10% of the worth of this man's estate. And then the second one didn't have a chance to collect her Isa Nechasim, Ad Shemesa Ben. But before that happened, the son died. So now the question is, we'll look in Rashi, V'nafel hayrushal if they habanais. So now the Yerusha is by both daughters. The question is it split evenly? Or do we say, 1 second, she didn't get the Isser Nechasim, so maybe we should first give her that, then we split it up. So Omer Rav Yochanan, so this is the key, we're mentioning Rav Yochanan's name, Shnia Vitra. The second girl was actually Moichel, her Isser Nechasim, says Rashi. V'lo Amrinan, we don't say Titul Isser Nechasim Tchila, that she should get that 10% first, Kamosha Natul Zu, just like her other sister did, V'yachakach Yachloku, and then we'll divide it. Rather, we just say, the reality is that we just divide it the way it is, and she will not get the Isser Nechasim. So Amar Rav Chanina, Gedol Mazu, even more than that, Moitzin lo Parnasim and Moitzin lo Mazainis. The din is when it comes to a shibud, the din is that we will be Moitzin lo Parnasa, but not for Mazanos. Viat Amrit, and you say Shania Vitra, you're going to say that she was just Moichel, her rights to the Isser Nechasim. Her rights are so strong to collect her dowry that she even gets it from a shibud, but from the lukuchos. So certainly she gets her parnasa of the 10th first. It's impossible to say that she's just simply moichel, because even her nedunya, there's a shibud that we could take. There's a lien on this person's land, and she can actually get it from there. So we certainly see that she should be able to get the 10%, the Isser Nechasim, and not that she is moichelet. Now, if it's so, Namele, why don't we just respond and say, Man Amra? Who said such a statement? Who made this statement? Who said, and this is Rabbi Yochanan saying this, that Moitzin lo Parnasim and Moitzin lo Mazainis. Man Amra? Who said such a thing? Vidilma, so it must be that he must have known that this is Rabbi's opinion, and nonetheless Rabbi Yochanan disagreed when it comes to, because he says vein motziin l'mazainis. Now according to Rabbi Yochanan, he says that it is ein motziin for mazonos and ein motziin l'parnasa. So it must be the fact that this statement was said, like Rabbi Chanina said this to Rabbi Yochanan in disagreement. It must be that he knew that this was what Rabbi said, and it didn't matter to him. He just disagreed with him. The Gemara says, well, maybe not. But Dilma Oil Moshmile. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan still never actually heard this statement. He didn't hear originally the statement from Rabbi. Had he heard that this was the opinion of Rabbi, that he makes a distinction between Parnas and Mazonos, maybe he would have accepted that. So Vashani Hossam, but it's different in this situation. The fact that he did not retract when he said that the second girl is just moichel, because the ika revach besa, says Rashi, shahari nistakra harbe shenotel schatzi hayerusha. In this situation, it may make sense that she's moichel because she's inheriting so much. Her brother is not in the picture. Her brother died. All there are 2 daughters, and her father left a tremendous amount of money. So maybe she is able to be moichel. So the fact that it's possible that there's this spar of Moitzin lo Parnasa, but maybe in this situation he would say it doesn't make any difference, even though there is a shibud. Maybe there is a shibud, like Rabbi says, and maybe I would agree to that when it comes to the nedunya. However, in this situation, because she's getting so much more, maybe she's moichel d'isnachasim. Armalei Rav Yemel Rabashi Albiatam. So if that's what you want to tell me, Ashkacha Metzia Ba'alma. I can understand when it comes to a Metzia Ba'alma. some found object, dika revach besa. So hachinami do yavinu leisna chasim. So maybe in that situation where it's like found money, so then okay, she's moichel because she has all this money. Or malay ana revach besa mahani. Amalei ana revach besa mahani nichse kamina. What I'm talking about again is from this Yerusha, from this inheritance, and therefore again that's the reason why she's moichel. Amar Meimer bas Yereshus havoy. So on this, a Meimer says that a daughter has the status of inheriting. When it comes to Isna Chasim, it's like she inherits that 10% right. Amalei Rav Ashi Meimer. So he said to a Meimer, if that's true, Ilu boy, if the Yarshim want, was Saluka Bezuze, to pay her up with money, you're telling me that they wouldn't be able to do so. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to. So in, you're right, that's the case. That if they want to pay her off with one property, then she doesn't have to accept it. The truth is that when it comes to a daughter, this woman, this Yisaima, she's considered to be a Bal Chayv. It's considered like she has a debt owed to her. It says Rashi, Umatzil Saluk Bezuze, and therefore, because it's a debt, so therefore the Yisaimim could pay her off with money, or with one particular property. So if it's a Yerusha, they can't just give a certain land. It has to be all divided properly for her Isser Nechasim. However, if you hold that she's a Bal Chayv, so Bal Chayv, you just pay off your debt in whichever way you can. The Alpha Meimer Hadarbe. The truth is, a Meimer retracted, who originally said that she's a Bas's Yereshus Havoy. Really, she's about a Bal Chayv, which again means that the Yisaimim could pay her off with one land or with money. The Omer Rab Min Yomi Berei de Rab Nechumi Havi Kamina Kameda Meimar. They were in front of a Meimar, who is the person we're trying to understand what he holds. Yasoy Hi Issa Kamen. There was a girl that came in front of him. The Havin Kaboy Isna Chosim. So obviously this is talking about a situation. This woman, her father had died, and she wanted this Nedunya of 10% of the father's estate. V'achazite daite, and a Meimar agreed to her thought. Now the Iboy L'Saluka Mezuzah having a Salik law that if they want to pay her off with any money, that the Yisraelim could do so. Because he heard from the brothers, the Havi Ka'amrile, they heard him say, the Il Havi Lon Zuze, if we had money, Salikna Mazuze, could we just pay her off with money? The Ishtik, and the Meimer was silent, which must be that he holds that she's considered to be a Baal Schayv. Now, Bahashadi Amr Baal Schayv, Haboy, the Abba or the Achi. The reality is we're saying that it's considered to be like a debt that's owed to her. And therefore, since it's a debt, again, she can be paid in any way, with money or with one land. But the question is the debt on the father who had died, or is it on the brothers, on her brothers? So my nafkamina, what's the real difference? So, that is the question. So if we look in Rashi, if the debt goes all the way back to their father, so the din is that just like the ksuba, you only have to give her from the most inferior lands. And the land is only collected when there is a shvua, as it says in Masechtas Gittin, that we only collect from Ziboris, from the most inferior property. So that's in the situation if the father is the Baal Chayv. However, if the Baal Chayv Shalahen, if it's on the brothers instead, Ein Kan Boli Par Menechsi Assignment. So in that situation, the din is that you collect from Baininus and also without a shvua. So again, in the event, Pum Fakert. So Ein Ephraim Menechsi Assignment element is Ziboris. Ein Ephraim Mehen El B'Shvua. So if the Baal Chayv is on them, so then that's the nafkamina, whether you collect from Baininus or Ziboris, or there's a shvua or not a shvua, mai. So the Gemara asks, what is the din? So before we go further, let's look at question 1. Ma nafkamina im habas be'isin nechasim balas chayiv da'av o da'achi, which is also question TB 25. So it says like this: Im goiva karka benis ozi boris im nefrayis b'shvua o shalo b'shvua. TB 25 asks similarly, and it says balas chayiv da'achin he. We're going to end up seeing that she's a bal chayiv to the brothers. Hilchach, since it's on the brother, goiva mebenis o shalo b'shvua. So again, if the bal chayiv is on the father, so then it's like the ksuba, and she collects. She can only get ziboris, the most inferior lands, and there's a shvua. However, as we're going to see soon, the bal chayiv is actually on the brothers, and therefore, because it's on the brothers, so they collect from baininess, and also they collect. She can collect even without a shvua. So we'll see this now. Tashma, Tashma. Dervina agva lebartid Ravashi. So we see that Ravina collected for the daughter of Ravashi, Marbareda Ravashi, and he collected Baininus, and also Shvua was not required when she came to collect her Isnachasim. Marbareda Rav Sam, Marbareda Ravashi. Ziboris, Marbareda Rav Sam, Marbareda Ravashi, Ziboris B'Shvua. Sholch Rav Nechem, Marbareda Rav Yosef, Rav Huna, Zutam, and Harda. Kiyasa, Ha isasol or kamoch, when this woman comes in front of you, agva isnuchasim, and she wants to collect her 10%. Efilu it's to rubla, you can even give to her, says Rashi, Moshev amas harichayim, kamoshehen, you can even give her the base of a mill, umikarkoi chashavuhu, and that's considered to be land. So again, because she's a balos chayiv, so you can pay her back in any way. Rav Ashi ki havinin be'rav. And again, if it's karka, then it has to be at least bendis. Or Marvashi ki havinin be'rav kahana. When we were at the bear of kahana, havi magminin afil ma'alma de basi. They collected, says Rashi, even schiras abatim mimikarkoi kaasi, that they collected from rentals of homes. Sholach le Rav Anan Rav Huna Chavrin, Huna our friend, Shalim pay. That when this girl comes before you, Agva Nichse Have, she's going to want to collect again her Isna Chasim. So Rav Sheshes was sitting there. Armalei Zil Amalei, go and say to her, Uve Shamta Yehe, that one should be in Shamta, says Rashi. When Rav Sheshes was sitting, Kishabah Hashleach Afanav, when a person came in front, the Ikbid Rav Huna al the Kari Huna Chavrin, the fact that he called Huna Chavrin my friend, so that was something which was not appropriate, says Rashi. Omrulei B'Loshin Gnai. He said in a disgraceful way, Kasher Amalach Deshamta Tihei Im Lo Timer B'Loshin Zeh. So because he spoke and called him like a friend, therefore he said that he spoke to him derogatorily, and he also said he should be in Shmat. So the Gemara continues and says, Havi Yosef Rav Sheshes Kamei Armalei Zil Amalei Vishamta. Yehi Mandoi Armalei, the one who does not say Anananan Mimakarkoi Anananan Mimakarkoi Omataltali. So Anananan Mehechen Ata Oimer, says Rashi, where should I collect? Where should this be collected? Is it only collected from Karka, or is it even collected from Metaltalin? So on this, Uman Yosef Be Marzecha Beresha. So it says Rashi, Mi Meitzev Beis Avu Beroish. Who is the one who puts the head of someone who's mourning that they go in the front? Says Rashi, Shahayu Mesubin Besuda, when they're sitting in a meal, Hayu Nikr Mesibasan, you can see while they're sitting, Mihu Haroish, who's the head. Shagodo Mesev Bamita Achas Berosh Shulchan, Shenu Bamita Acheres. So you can see who the leader is. Ozra Sheshel Kamid Ravanan, Armalei Mar Rabba Rabhuna Rabbi the Rabba Shamtuye Shamit. Again, that he should be punished for speaking in this way. Madul Armalahu the Ilav the Shamis Loy have a Kamin Anananam Nikarkoi Matatali. Uman Yosef Be Marzecha Beresha. Again, similar language. Also, Rav Anan Lekamedo Marukva, Armali Chazi Mar Hechi Sholachli Rav Huna, Anan Anan. Bo in Marzecha the Sholachli Uyadani Mainihu. Because I don't understand what this is referring to. So Emily, please tell me exactly Gufa de Uvda Hechehavi. What exactly happened over here? It seems a little bit hard to understand as we continue to Samatesamad Beis. So Amalei Hachi v'Hachi Havoi. Maisa. He said, he relayed the entire story. Says Rashi, Techila Hadavar Mal Lashon Shalachtaloi, what exactly was sent? Amalei Gavidol Yada Manihu Marzecha. This person who doesn't know what Marzecha is, Shalachle Rabhuna Huda Chavrin, all of a sudden you're going to call him your friend? So my Marzechas, Avel, as we said before, this is referring to a person who is in the status of mourning. Hashem Al Tava Beis Marzeach V'Goimer. So since we mentioned the story about this conversation about this language, and he said, like, you don't even know what this means, you're going to call him as a friend, so it was disrespectful in this language. So how do we know that someone who is in the status of mourning, that they should actually sit the head? You should sit at the head, the eshkoin, and you should dwell kamelach b'gadud, just like a king with his troops. Kasher avelim yinachim, just like mourners as they are consoled. Yinachim acher mashma. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak yinachem ksiv, that the consoled one, not that he's the one who is consoling, but he is the consoled one. Ksiv. Mar zutra oimer mahach v'sar mirzach seruchim, the excessive levels of mourning. Mar v'zach nasa sar l'seruchim. Omar Rabba hilchasa. At the end of the day, the halacha is mekarkoi v'lo metaltali, that you only collect from karka, not from metaltalin. Ben l'mazayni, ben l'ksuva, ben l'parnas. So when it comes to the collecting of her mazonos, this daughter, when the father dies, that she gets mazonos, it's only taken from karka. So too for the ksuva and for the parnasa, for the nedunya, as we mentioned before. So let's now continue with the next Mishnah. Hamashlish mois labitoi. So you have, says Rashi, Moser mois biad shlish, that you gave money to a shliach, to a third party, L'tzarach bitoi, for the sake of your daughter, Liknoi sada unadunya lekishit tinase, that when my daughter gets married, that you should purchase a field for her. Now, this man is on his deathbed, and then he dies. So in this case, he omeres neman bali olai, my father trusts me, and therefore there's no need for you to have to do this. You don't have to give me the land, just give me basically the cash. So yasa shliishimasha hushlach shbiyada divri rameir. The din is that this shliach must do exactly what the father said. He has to purchase the field because there's a concept of mitzvah shmo divrei hames. It's a mitzvah l'kayim divrei hames, to listen to what the father said. And since the father said this statement that I want my daughter to get this particular land as nedunya, so therefore that's precisely what takes place. Rabbi Yossi Yomi says that's not necessary. It's a field. The truth is, if let's say he says, no, I have to buy it. So she, as soon as she gets the field, she could sell the field and get the money anyway. So it really is not much of a nafkamina, and therefore she should be able to have the ability to tell him, you know what, give me its value. When do we say, the Gemara is going to explain what this is going on, that katana's maisim have no meaning. Okay. So, B'medimur Amurim says, when do we listen to her? When she's potentially, only when she's a gedoyel. When she's a katana, we're not going to listen to her. Tanurbanam. Hamash l'shmoish l'chasonoi. So let's say you designated a third party to give money to your son-in-law. Likach mehen sad levitoi. And his job is to purchase a field for this man's daughter. And again, he's on his deathbed and he dies. The Hiomeris Yinosnu Labaili, you should give it to my husband, right? It's not necessary for you to buy it, just give me him the money and that's it. So min and asuin, if let's say they're already married, harishus biyada, then it's in her hands to do so. Again, it's logical because they could just simply sold the field afterwards. Mina Erison, however, if they're only engaged, then Yasa Rameir. Then Rameir says that no, just like our Mishnah, that the third party, this shliach, has to go and do the will of the father. That is the words of Rabbi. Rabbi Yosi Omer Hagadayla. If we're dealing with a girl who's a Gadayla, Bein Min and Nesuin, Bein Min Erison, or Rishus Biyadai. The truth is, even from Erison, it doesn't matter. She should be allowed to do so. What's the difference? Again, she at the end of the day, they can sell it. However, Katana, a girl who is not a Bas Das, and Ein Masa Katana Klum, Katana, Bein Min and Nesuin, Bein Min Erison, Yasa Shlishim Asher Hushlish Biyadai. In that situation, certainly by a Katana, we're not going to listen to her. The Shliach does whatever. However, so the Machlokas, L'chayra, my Benayu, L'chayra has nothing to do with a Katana. Apparently, the Machlokas has to do with a girl who's a Gedola from the times of Erison. Okay, so we'll establish this in a few lines. So, maybe it's the difference is if she's a katana, but now she's fully married, whether the shliach should continue to buy the land or give it to her husband. That it's in her hands, we can listen to her. That only when it comes to Gedolah do we listen to her words to give to her husband, but a katana not. So Ema Seva, Abba Katana in Masayada Klum. It says beferish that for a katana l'char there should be no argument that no one should hold that it would work. Haman Katanila. Rabbi Yosi, if you want to tell me that's like the shita of Rabbi Yosi, what do you mean? You can already derive that from the beginning statement. Yom Rabbi Yosi, as Rabbi Yosi said, V'chi eno el sada v'hi ratza l'machra. Harihi machor mi'achshav. So she could always just sell the land. Who could sell the land? Only Gedolah the Basvini in Katana la Basvini he lo. So certainly he holds the whole svar of why we should give the money directly and not to purchase this land is because she could sell it. But when could she sell it? Only as a Gedolah. She can't sell anything as a katana. She doesn't have the yad to be able to do so. So certainly Rabbi Yossi holds that when it comes to a katana, it doesn't work. Elo Rameir he v'chasur mechzor hakatani. Maybe it's like Rameir. Yasa shlish, and this is how you're supposed to read it. Yasa shlish masher hushbiyadok. That the shliach is supposed to listen to the father's last words, and therefore what he's supposed to do is he's supposed to buy the land. But b'medibur moreim min erison. That's only by erison. But min nesuin hershus biyadai. B'medibur more b'gedolah. Of katana ein masiyadei klum. So perhaps that's what it's saying. Elwa gedolah min erison ikubnayu. The truth is that the nafkamina is when it's talking about a gedolah. And it's from Erison, that is the distinction. Whether or not we'll say that the shliach, since it's only by Erison, that the shliach should buy the land, or that's not necessarily listen to her then as well. Itmar. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shmuel halacha Rabbi Yosi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yosi in our Mishnah, that again she could always have it sold, which means as a gedolah, even if it's from Beman and Nesuan or even Erison, we should listen to her. Rav Omer Rav Nachman halacha Reb Meir. The halacha, in fact, is like the shita of Reb Meir. Okay, so it's a machlokas, which way you hold. Ilfa. So we have the story which is actually brought down Masechtas Tainus. Ilfa was a great Talmid Chacham, and he himself was, instead of learning Torah, he went off to do business, and then he felt bad about it. People thought that he wasn't maybe as knowledgeable as he could be. So Tola Nashe Biskaria Demachusa. So he was literally hanging himself like by a sail. He was literally depressed because again people thought that he had not acquired the level of knowledge that he was capable of. So Amr Ika de Asi de Amrli Milsa de Be Rabbi Chia Rabbi Yishavu Afshitale Mimasnisin Nafilim Iskaria Vetavana. So he said if there's a person that could quote a thought, and if I can't explain it based on the learnings of Rav Chia and Rav Oishia, then I'm going to basically fall from this mast, from the sail, and I'll end up drowning. So he was basically threatening, but he wasn't really threatening. He was basically saying that I'm still extremely scholarly. So also who's Saba. So one person took his dare, and Tanule they learned as follows: Ha'omer tenu shekel levanai. If a person says that on his deathbed, he says, I want you to be able to give, as part of my estate, 1 shekel to my children, to my child, b'Shabbos a week. The truth is that he could have given him more. The truth is, so we're going to go above and beyond and give him more. So nice lehem sella, says Rashi, di havi yada the siakru hamazonos. If he would have known the price of mazonos went up, the yitzruchu a sella, and that he would have needed a sella, lo havi omer, he wouldn't have said this smaller amount. V'im omer, but if he said al titnu lehem, do not give to them el a shekel, so ein nice lehem el a shekel. So if he says it specifically, and this is going to be question 2, misha nichtzavah lazoinis banav. I want my children to be satiated, and after I die, b'shekel l'shvua, be'elu afanim ein nice lehem yoyser alfa pi she'ein dai lehem b'shekel. Maybe a shekel is not enough for the food. The price of food went up, inflation. So if he actually said, one answer is al titnu lehem el shekel, he was very specific. In that situation, we have to listen to him, and it has to be a shekel. V'im oimer, if he says imesu yirshu acherim tachtehem, that if they die, then the Yarshim will inherit after them. Bein shomer tenu, bein shomer al titnu, ein nois lehem el shekel. Also, in that situation, we do not give except for a shekel, says Rashi. If, let's say, they die without children, ein nois lehem el shekel, de ein lo hasid es haboyim achreihim. He clearly did not want the people after him to lose out. So he was thinking about like the future generations, which is question 2. So therefore, because of that, also they're only going to get a shekel. Im asa acherim yorshehem im yamusu. That if they die, that I'm thinking you should give to them, to other next generation. So it's very clear that he's being particular about how much money he's giving. So again, bein shemer tenu, bein shemer al titnu, ein nos lamel shekel. So Amar lahu, Hamani, who is this like? As we continue item and Aleph. So Ilfa said, Rameir he, Divrei mitzvah kayim divrei hames. Because Rameir holds, based on what we're saying by the shliach, they have to listen to whatever the shliach says, that's mitzvah kayim divrei hames. Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Mar Ukva Hilchza, the din is, bein shemer tenu, bein shemer al titnu, whether he says give or says language al titnu, nois lehem kol tzarcham. We should still give them whatever they need. Aha kaimon halach Rameir, diamar mitzvah kayim divrei hames. What does that mean? We just said you're supposed to listen to whatever the guy says. It's a mitzvah to listen to the words of the mace. So how could it be that, no, it doesn't make any difference to still give him whatever they need? That's only regarding to other things. The truth is that the father didn't want to be skimpy, but he also wants his children to be zaras. He wants the children to not just rely on his food. Says Rashi, Shiachser Acham Zinasehen, Ushlihe Rav Toinen, that they should not be just looking after these handouts from the father. So therefore he said it in this certain way, but it maybe didn't really mean that he was being particular that it has to be this exact amount, because he really wants his children not to starve, and therefore for that reason you give l'chol sarchechem. But the truth is that when it comes to other matters, it is a mitzvah to hear and to follow the divrei hames, which is why Rameir in our Mishnah says that under certain circumstances, that if the man told the shliach that he has to give land or a specific nedunya for his daughter, so that's exactly what should be done, because you're supposed to listen to that which he said. Okay. So now, TA23, great question. This is how we actually started up on the very top over here, TA23. So the question he asks is, Rav Shal Rabbi Ha'achin Sheshibdu, Hi'im Moitzin La Parnasa, Madu Anakan Lashon Shibdu. Why didn't he use the language of Mechira or Mashkain? And the answer is because he wanted to know both answers. Says his answer is the Mashma Machor Mashma Mishkanai Rav Yifarish Lo Mahadin Bishnehem. He wanted him to basically explain what the din is by both of them. So this is what he says. Rav Turvayu Kimeboyle. So he really wanted to know both answers. Question TB 26. Adkan.